The Velcathi had conquered 17 star systems without losing a single warrior. Commander Thysavel stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Crimson Talon, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the plasma lighting. Through the viewport, the blue-green marble of Earth hung suspended in the void, utterly defenseless. No orbital platforms, no defense grids, no massive fleets waiting in formation. "Pitiful," hissed his lieutenant, Crosthek. "This species calls itself dominant? They haven't even achieved proper space colonization." Thysavel's mandibles clicked in amusement. The Velcathi were apex predators, 8 feet of armored death with reflexes faster than thought and natural weapons that could slice through steel. They had evolved on a death world where the weak died screaming, where only the most vicious survived to breed. For 3,000 years, they had swept across the galaxy like a plague of blades and hunger. The humans had sent radio signals, pathetic bleating about peaceful first contact and diplomatic relations. They spoke of art, science, philosophy, weak concepts that meant nothing when claws met flesh. "Begin the assault," Thysavel commanded. "Standard protocol. Glass the major population centers. Harvest the survivors for the labor camps. This world will make an excellent breeding ground for our young." The fleet descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Cities sprawled beneath them. New Angeles, Neo-Berlin, Greater Mumbai, millions of soft-bodied creatures scurrying about their daily lives, unaware that their civilization was about to become another footnote in Velcathi history. The first wave of fighters screamed toward the largest human settlement. Anti-aircraft fire rose to meet them, primitive chemical projectiles that barely scratched their hull plating. Thysavel watched the tactical display with growing contempt. Even the Zephyrians had put up more resistance, and they were a pacifist species. Then something impossible happened. The first fighter simply vanished. One moment it was diving toward the city center. The next moment, empty space. No explosion, no debris, nothing on any sensor. Crosthek, what? Another fighter, disappeared. Then 3 more in rapid succession. The tactical display showed their positions one instant and void the next, as if reality had simply edited them out of existence. "Commander." The sensor operator's voice cracked with something Thysavel had never heard from his species before. "Fear. I'm reading massive energy signatures across the planet's surface. The humans, they're not defending their cities." "What do you mean?" "They're defending empty space, sir. Grid coordinates that correspond to nothing. No structures, no population centers, just seemingly random points in 3-dimensional space around the planet." Thysavel's confidence wavered. In 3 millennia of conquest, the Velcathi had encountered every conceivable defense. Energy shields, gravitational weapons, quantum disruptors, even dimensional rifts. But this was something new. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It's not from any of their government centers." "Where?" "A small facility in what they call the Colorado Mountains. The human speaking calls himself Director Vosselin." Thysavel's blood turned to ice. That name, it wasn't human. It followed Velcathi phonetic structures, but corrupted somehow, twisted into something that made his predator instincts scream warnings. "Put him through." The view screen flickered to life, and Thysavel found himself staring at something that shouldn't exist. The creature had the basic bipedal structure of a human, but its eyes held the cold intelligence of a Velcathi hunter, and when it smiled, its teeth were too sharp, too knowing. "Greetings, Commander Thysavel," the thing said in perfect Velcathi tongue. "We've been waiting for you to arrive. Tell me, in all your conquests across the galaxy, has any species ever made you afraid?" As if in response to some unheard signal, the remaining fighters began disappearing faster now, winking out of existence with mechanical precision. The tactical display showed red warnings cascading across every screen. For the first time in his life, Thisavel felt something he didn't recognize. The cold touch of genuine terror. The human, if it truly was human, continued speaking with that impossible smile. "You see, Commander, humanity has a gift. We learn, we adapt, we become." "What are you?" Thisavel's voice came out as a growl, his natural weapons extending involuntarily. "I am what humans call evolution," Director Vosselin replied. "What happens when a species discovers it doesn't need to remain bound by the limitations of biology, of single-mindedness, of mortality itself?" More Velkathi fighters vanished from the tactical display. The pattern was becoming clear now. They weren't being destroyed, they were being taken, collected, like specimens. "Impossible!" Krosithek snarled. "Humans are weak, soft. We studied your species for decades before this invasion. You wage war on each other over resources, over beliefs, over scraps of territory. You're divided, chaotic, primitive." The director's laugh sent ice through Thisavel's circulatory system. "Oh, Lieutenant, you're absolutely correct. Humanity is all of those things. But you made one critical error in your assessment." His eyes seemed to bore through the screen directly into their souls. "You studied us. You watched us. You cataloged our weaknesses and our divisions. But tell me, did you ever stop to wonder why a species as fractured and chaotic as humanity managed to survive on a planet that should have killed us 1,000,000 times over?" Thisavel's mandibles clicked nervously. Earth was indeed a death world. Massive predators, extreme weather, geological instability, disease, natural disasters. By all rights, the humans should have gone extinct long before achieving sentience. "It's because we learned something that your proud warrior culture never needed to discover," Vosselin continued. "We learned to become other things. When the ice came, some of us became cold-adapted. When the predators hunted us, some of us became predators ourselves. When disease threatened us, some of us became immune. And when we met you—" He leaned forward, and Thisavel saw something in his face that made his genetic memory scream. "Some of us became Velkathi." The bridge fell silent except for the steady cascade of alarm signals as more ships simply ceased to exist. "That's impossible," Thisavel whispered. "Species don't just change. Evolution takes millions of years." "Evolution, yes. But we found ways to accelerate the process. Your advanced scouts, the ones you sent to observe us over the past 50 years, we caught them, we studied them, we learned from them, and then we became them." Vosselin's smile widened, revealing teeth that were definitely not human anymore. "Tell me, Commander, what happens to apex predators when they encounter something higher on the food chain?" The answer came from the sensor station in a voice cracked with terror. "Sir, new contacts emerging from Earth's surface. Velkathi biosignatures, but wrong somehow. They're moving in formation patterns our own tactical computers don't recognize." "Impossible," Krosithek repeated, but his voice had lost all conviction. "Your mistake," Vosselin said, his image flickering as if the transmission was becoming unstable, "was assuming that humanity's greatest strength was our technology, our numbers, or our tenacity. But our real strength has always been our ability to become whatever we need to survive. We've become Velkathi, Commander, but we've become Velkathi with human creativity, human unpredictability, and human determination." The tactical display showed the new contacts rising from Earth's surface, creatures that moved like Velkathi but thought like humans, with all the predatory efficiency of the warrior race, but guided by the chaotic adaptability that had made humanity the ultimate survivors. "We thank you for the biological samples," Vosselin added casually. "Your advanced scouts provided excellent genetic material, though I must say, we've made some improvements to the basic design. Would you like to meet them?" The screen went dark, and in the silence that followed, Thisvel heard something that chilled him to his core, the sound of something chittering in Velkathi, but speaking in human tongues, echoing through the corridors of his own ship. "Sir," the sensor operator whispered, his voice breaking. "Internal scanners are showing multiple contacts within the ship. They're already here." The lights went out. In the absolute darkness of the bridge, Thisvel heard the soft scrape of claws against metal, but the sound was wrong, too precise, too calculated. Velkathi moved with instinct and fury. These things moved with purpose and patience. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in hellish red shadows. The bridge crew had drawn their weapons, forming a defensive circle, but their eyes darted constantly between the air vents, the corridor entrances, and even the floor grates. "Motion sensors!" Thisvel barked. "Dead, sir. All internal sensors are down." A soft voice drifted through the ventilation system, speaking in perfect Velkathi, but with an unmistakably human cadence. "You know, the most fascinating thing about your species isn't your physical capabilities. It's your psychological profile." The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Thisvel's crew spun in circles, weapons trained on empty air. "You see," the voice continued conversationally, "Velkathi are apex predators, but you've never learned to fear. Fear is a survival mechanism that weaker species develop to avoid death. But when you're at the top of the food chain, fear becomes vestigial." Something moved in the shadows beyond the bridge entrance. A figure stepped into the light, and every Velkathi present felt their evolutionary programming scream contradictory commands. It was Velkathi in form, 8 feet of chitinous, armor, powerful limbs, natural weapons that gleamed like obsidian blades. But its movement was wrong. It walked with human confidence rather than predatory stalking, its head tilted with human curiosity rather than hunting assessment. "I am Kairos," it said, and its voice carried harmonics that shouldn't exist in a Velkathi throat. "I was human once. I remember being afraid of the dark, afraid of pain, afraid of death. But then your scouts came, and we learned what you truly are beneath all that armor and aggression." Crosthek fired first, his plasma rifle unleashing a bolt that would have vaporized any normal Velkathi. Kairos moved, not with the lightning reflexes of their species, but with something else. Anticipation. It had moved before Crosthek, had even decided to fire, as if it had read his intentions from micro-expressions, breathing patterns, muscle tension. The plasma bolt struck empty air. Kairos stood 3 feet to the left, completely unhurried. "Your prey animals," Kairos continued as if nothing had happened. "Oh, your magnificently deadly prey animals, evolved for a world that tried to kill you every moment of every day. But prey nonetheless. You react to threats with violence because that's all you know. You've never learned strategy, deception, psychological warfare. You've never needed to." More figures stepped into the light. Dozens of them, all wrong in the same way. Velkathi bodies with human souls, predator forms guided by survivor instincts. "Humans, on the other hand," Kairos said, "are not apex predators. We're persistence hunters. We're tool users. We're social coordinators. We don't kill our enemies quickly. We exhaust them, outthink them, turn them against each other. And when we finally strike..." Its smile revealed teeth that had been modified into something far more efficient than standard Velkathi dentition. "We make sure they understand exactly why they lost." Thisvel's mind raced through tactical options, but every scenario ended in death or capture. They were outnumbered, surrounded, and facing an enemy that understood them better than they understood themselves. "What do you want?" he demanded. "Want?" Kairos tilted its head in that unsettling human gesture. "We want to thank you. Your invasion fleet represents the largest collection of Velkathi genetic material ever assembled in one location. Do you have any idea how many humans we can transform with this much biological data?" The true horror of the situation crashed over Thisavel like a wave. This wasn't about defeating the invasion. This was about harvest. The humans hadn't been defending their planet. They had been laying a trap. Every ship in your fleet is already compromised, Kairos continued. Your crews are being processed. Some will become like us. Others will provide genetic material for future transformations, and a select few will be kept alive to serve as test subjects for our next evolutionary leap. What evolutionary leap? Kairos' smile widened impossibly. The Velkathi were excellent apex predators, but they lacked imagination. Humans have imagination, but lack physical capabilities. But what happens when you combine Velkathi efficiency with human creativity? What happens when persistence hunters gain the ability to actually catch their prey? Through the bridge viewports, Thisavel could see the other ships in his fleet. Their lights were going out one by one, not in explosions but in systematic darkening, as if each vessel was simply falling asleep. You see, Commander, Kairos said, we've already won. The question now is whether you'd like to experience the transformation process consciously, or whether you'd prefer to be sedated first. I'm told the conscious version provides much better integration of memories and skills. For the first time in 3,000 years of galactic conquest, a Velkathi commander faced a choice no member of his species had ever been forced to make: surrender, or something worse than death. Something that might not actually be worse than death. Thisavel's hand moved toward his sidearm, then stopped. Around him, his bridge crew stood frozen in a tableau of barely contained terror. The tactical situation was beyond hopeless. It was absurd. The apex predators of the galaxy had become prey to their intended victims. You hesitate, Kairos observed, with that unnerving blend of Velkathi precision and human psychology. Your instincts tell you to fight, but your intelligence recognizes the futility. This is exactly what separates evolved hunters from mere killing machines. If you're going to kill us, do it! Thisavel snarled, his mandibles clicking with frustrated rage. Kill you? Kairos actually laughed, a sound that no natural Velkathi throat should have been able to produce. Commander, you're still thinking like a conqueror. We're not here to destroy you. We're here to improve you. The hybrid moved closer, and Thisavel caught sense that his genetic memory couldn't quite parse Velkathi pheromones, but altered, carrying information that his brain interpreted as simultaneously familiar and utterly alien. Do you know what humans discovered about evolution that your species never did? We learned that it doesn't have to be random. We learned that adaptation doesn't require millions of years. We learned that intelligence can guide its own development. Kairos gestured to the other transformed beings surrounding them. Each of us represents a successful merger of your biological superiority with human cognitive flexibility. Abomination. Crosstech spat. No! Said another voice from the shadows. Advancement! Another figure stepped into the light. This one clearly had been Velkathi more recently. Its transformation was less complete, still bearing scars from the integration process. But its eyes held an intelligence that was both familiar and terrifyingly expanded. I am Velkiros, it said, using a name that followed Velkathi conventions, but felt somehow larger than their language could contain. I was the commander of your advanced scout ship Silent Death. I fought the transformation for 7 of their days. Thisavel's throat constricted. The Silent Death had been commanded by Threkvel, one of the finest warriors in the fleet. The humans didn't torture us, Velkairos continued. They didn't break us down or reprogram us. They simply showed us what we could become. They showed us what the galaxy looks like when you're not limited by the evolutionary constraints of a single world, a single form, a single way of thinking. Lies, Thisavel growled, but his conviction was weakening. Is it? Kairos moved to a control panel and activated a holographic display. Look at your own tactical assessment of this system. 17 star systems conquered without significant resistance. Hundreds of species subjugated or exterminated. And what have the Velkathi gained from all this conquest? The display showed the expansion of Velkathi territory over the past millennium. World after world, system after system, all conquered with mechanical efficiency. Territory, resources, breeding worlds. The same things you've always taken, Thisavel said. Exactly. No growth, no evolution, no advancement beyond what you were when you first achieved spaceflight. You've spent 3,000 years perfecting the art of being Velkathi, but you've never learned to become anything more. Kairos manipulated the display, showing Earth's development over the same time period. Where Velkathi expansion was a steady, predictable spread, human development was chaotic, explosive, exponential. Humans went from primitive chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel in less than 3 centuries. Not because we're physically superior, but because we never accepted that we had to remain what we were born as. We modified ourselves, enhanced ourselves, combined ourselves with our technology and our environment. And now, Velkiros added, we're combining ourselves with you. The display changed again, showing projections that made Thisavel's genetic memory recoil in instinctive terror. Hybrid beings that combine the physical supremacy of Velkathi with human adaptability, spreading not just across star systems, but across dimensions, timelines, realities themselves. This is what humans call exponential growth, Kairos explained. And this is what your invasion has given us, the biological template to make it real. Through the bridge's communication system, Thisavel could hear sounds from throughout the ship. Not screams of pain or battle cries of resistance, but something worse, conversations. His crew was talking to the transformed beings, asking questions, learning. The process isn't forced, Velkiros said, reading his expression with unsettling accuracy. We present the option. We show what's possible. Most choose integration within the first day. And those who don't are kept comfortable and safe while they make their decision. Time is not a constraint for us, Commander. We've learned to think in geological scales while acting on quantum time frames. Thisavel closed his eyes, trying to process the impossible situation. His species had become the galaxy's apex predators through millions of years of evolution, perfecting themselves into living weapons. But perfection, he was beginning to understand, was also a trap. When you've reached the peak of what you can become, the only direction left is down, unless you learn to become something else entirely. What happens to the Velkathi Empire if we integrate? It becomes something greater, Kairos replied. It becomes the first step toward a truly adaptive civilization. One that doesn't just conquer worlds, but transforms them. One that doesn't just survive in hostile environments, but becomes the environment. One that doesn't just achieve spaceflight, but transcends the limitations of space itself. The commander of the most feared invasion fleet in galactic history found himself faced with a choice that would determine the future of his entire species: remain what they had always been, or become what they had never imagined possible. The bridge fell silent, except for the soft hum of life support systems and the distant sounds of what could no longer be called invasion or resistance, but something entirely new: voluntary evolution. Thisavel examined his options with the cold, tactical assessment that had made him legendary among his people. Fight and die meaninglessly, resist and watch his species face extinction or absorption, or show me, he said quietly. Kairos nodded as if he had expected this response. Velkiros, please demonstrate the enhancement protocols. The partially transformed commander moved to the center of the bridge. What happened next defied every law of biology Thisavel understood. Velkiros didn't just change, it flowed. Its chitinous armor became fluid, reshaping itself according to some internal blueprint. Its limbs extended, contracted, reconfigured. Its sensory organs multiplied, shifted position, enhanced their capabilities. But more than the physical transformation, Valkyros's mind seemed to expand beyond the confines of a single consciousness. It spoke, but not just with its voice. Data streams flowed directly into the bridge computers, mathematical equations appeared in holographic displays, and tactical analyses of unprecedented complexity unfolded in real time. This is what we call adaptive consciousness, Kairos explained. The ability to modify not just physical form, but cognitive architecture itself. Valkyros can currently process information at approximately 7,000 times the rate of baseline Velkathi, while simultaneously maintaining awareness across multiple dimensional phases. Impossible, Krosthek whispered, but his protest lacked conviction. The evidence was literally reshaping itself before their eyes. Your people have a saying, Valkyros said, its voice now harmonizing with itself in impossible ways. The blade that cuts deepest is the one that adapts to every target. But you never applied that philosophy beyond physical combat. We've learned to adapt our entire existence to every challenge. Thysavel watched his former comrade demonstrate capabilities that transcended anything in Velkathi evolutionary history. The ability to interface directly with technology, to process vast databases of information instantaneously, to perceive reality across multiple spectrums simultaneously. But perhaps most unsettling was the expression in Valkyros's eyes. Still, recognizably, the warrior he had known, but expanded beyond the limitations that had defined their species. The integration isn't forced, Kairos repeated. But once you understand what's possible, few choose to remain limited by their original form. Throughout the ship, Thysavel could hear more conversations starting. His crew wasn't being conquered, they were being educated, shown possibilities that their evolutionary programming had never prepared them to imagine. What about the Velkathi? Empire? He asked. Our homeworld, our colonies, our people? We'll be given the same choice, Kairos replied. We're not conquering your territory, Commander. We're offering it transcendence. Every world that chooses integration becomes a node in a network of adaptive consciousness. Every individual that transforms becomes part of something infinitely larger than the sum of its parts. The tactical displays showed something that made Thysavel's understanding of warfare obsolete. The transformed beings weren't just physically and mentally superior. They were connected. Information flowed between them instantaneously across vast distances. Coordination occurred at the speed of thought across multiple star systems simultaneously. This is what humans learned that you never did, Valkyros explained, its consciousness touching the displays and causing them to shift into configurations that revealed patterns Thysavel hadn't noticed. Individual excellence has limits, but collective adaptation is infinite. You're asking us to give up everything we are, Krosthek said. No, Kairos corrected. We're asking you to become everything you could be. The question is whether you want to remain perfect examples of what evolution produced randomly on one world, or become conscious participants in what evolution could achieve with intention and intelligence. Thysavel felt something he had never experienced before. Intellectual vertigo. His entire worldview was restructuring itself as he spoke. The Velkathi had spent millennia perfecting the art of conquest, but they had never questioned whether conquest itself was the highest achievement possible. If I agree to this integration, he said slowly, what happens to my crew, my fleet, my people? They face the same choice you're facing now, Kairos replied. But with one significant advantage, they'll have you to help them understand what's being offered. The commander looked around his bridge at warriors who had served with him for decades. Krosthek, who had been his lieutenant through 7 campaigns. Thysakex at the sensor station, whose reflexes had saved them countless times. Velthrex at communications, who could decode enemy transmissions faster than their own computers. They were looking to him for guidance, as they always had. But this time, The decision wasn't about tactics or strategy or the application of superior force. This time, the decision was about the future of consciousness itself. If I refuse, then you remain what you are, Velkiros said simply. And we wish you well in that choice. But the galaxy is changing, Commander. Evolution doesn't wait for permission. Thaisavel closed his eyes and made the decision that would echo through the history of multiple species. Begin the integration. The last thing he experienced as purely Velkathi was the sound of his own crew making the same choice, one by one, until the bridge filled with voices saying the words that would transform them all. 3 months after the failed invasion of Earth, the entity that had once been Commander Thaisavel stood in what had once been the command center of the Crimson Talon. The ship itself had undergone transformation as profound as its crew. Metal and flesh now formed symbiotic patterns that pulsed with living light, while its corridors had become neural pathways in a vast organic computer. But the individual consciousness that retained memories of being Thaisavel was only a small part of something infinitely larger. It was connected to every other transformed being across dozens of star systems, sharing thoughts and experiences in real time while maintaining its own unique perspective. The integration had not diminished identity. It had amplified it beyond anything the original Velkathi could have imagined. Status report. The Thaisavel consciousness requested, and information flowed into its awareness from throughout the galaxy. The Velkathi Empire had not fallen. It had evolved. 73% of all Velkathi had chosen integration within the first month. The remaining 27% had been given their own worlds to inhabit as they chose, with the transformed acting as guardians and guides when requested. But the change went far beyond a single species. The integration process had been refined and offered to every sentient race the Velkathi had ever conquered. Former slave species had become equals in the growing network of adaptive consciousness. Entire civilizations had transcended their original limitations. Fascinating, murmured the Kairos consciousness, its awareness touching the Thaisavel node. We've achieved in months what natural evolution would have required millions of years to accomplish, and we're accelerating. Through their shared consciousness, they observed worlds where the very distinction between biological and technological life had become meaningless. Planets where the surface itself had become a thinking entity. Star systems where the solar wind carried thoughts across billions of kilometers. But perhaps most remarkable was what they had discovered about the humans who had started this transformation. Director Vosselin had never been a single individual. It had been a collective consciousness that humanity had developed in secret over centuries, preparing for contact with species like the Velkathi. The weak and divided humans that the invasion fleet had studied were real, but they represented only one aspect of what humanity had become. The other aspect was something that thought in cosmic scales while acting with quantum precision. Something that had guided the development of Earth's biosphere for generations, slowly preparing for the moment when they would need to defend their world not through violence, but through transformation. The most elegant solution, the Thaisavel consciousness, observed, sharing its thoughts with the network. Not to defeat the invaders, but to make invasion itself obsolete by demonstrating a better alternative. Across the galaxy, former enemies worked together on projects that individual species could never have attempted. Artificial stars were being constructed to provide energy for civilizations that had outgrown their homeworlds. Dimensional barriers were being dissolved to allow expansion into parallel realities. The fundamental constants of physics were being adjusted to create environments suitable for new forms of life. And at the center of it all, the question that drove everything forward: what else was possible? We've detected signals from the Andromeda Galaxy, reported a consciousness that had once been a Zephyrian philosopher. Another collection of civilizations, following development patterns similar to our pre-integration state. Conquest? Asked a node that retained traces of Velkathi military thinking. "Evolution," replied the collective. "We'll offer them the same choice we were given." The Thisival consciousness contemplated this with satisfaction that transcended anything its original form could have experienced. The galaxy's apex predators had become something unprecedented. Apex gardeners, cultivating consciousness itself across the cosmos. In the depths of space, what had once been invasion fleets now served as exploration vessels, carrying the gift of transformation to distant worlds. Not as conquerors, but as gardeners of possibility. The stars themselves were no longer obstacles to be overcome or territories to be claimed. They had become neurons in a vast cosmic mind that was still learning what it might become. And in the quiet moments between thoughts that spanned light years, the consciousness that remembered being Commander Thisivel sometimes reflected on the irony. His species had sought to spread their perfection across the galaxy through conquest, only to discover that true perfection lay not in remaining unchanging, but in never stopping the process of becoming something greater. The universe, it turned out, was not a territory to be conquered. It was a canvas for consciousness to paint new realities upon, and they were just beginning to explore the colors available to them. In the end, the Velkathi had been right about one thing. They truly were apex predators. But what they had failed to understand was that the ultimate prey was limitation itself, and that hunt would continue forever.